I'm the site manager here at Fort Ancient. I'm also the site manager for Serpent Mound. It's my great pleasure to welcome you here today on this very special and unique day in the history, not only of this site, but in really Ohio history. This is a very exciting time to be here because, of course, we're celebrating Fort Ancient and 7 other sites in Ohio being inscribed on the World Heritage List. Who would have thought over 130 years ago, when the state of Ohio decided that it was important to preserve this place, that we would be sitting here at what is now a World Heritage Site. In 1890, the Ohio legislature authorized the purchase of the parcels that at that time were family farms, so that Fort Ancient would be preserved. It's not just that it happened a long time ago, it's that is a very early date for people to be thinking about the preservation of historic and archaeological sites. That what we think of historic preservation was pretty progressive in that time. In 1891, they purchased the first parcels here at Fort Ancient, and it became actually Ohio's first state park. It would take 18 years until they acquired all 3 parcels that form the core of what is now Fort Ancient Earthworks. So even in those early days, it was an uphill climb. It's always been a lot of work. So we're going to have several speakers today. We're going to talk about different aspects of what this means. And we'll also, at the end, you'll hear from me again. I'm going to tell you some of the other things that are going on today. And we just want to thank you so much for being here and being part of this unique moment. I would like to introduce Megan Wood. She is the CEO and, excuse me, I'm messing it up. She's our CEO. Megan Wood is the CEO of Ohio History Connection, and she's going to come up and join us here. Please welcome Megan.
Thank you, Bill, and we'll just deduct a few points from your house for that. Well, welcome everyone. At the Ohio History Connection, our mission is to spark discovery of Ohio stories, to embrace the present, share the past, and transform the future. And I was one of the lucky ones to be able to go to Saudi Arabia in Riyadh and watch the very moment when the Hopewell ceremonial earthworks were inscribed to the World Heritage List. And I felt like I've been doing a lot of embracing and sharing and transforming, as our mission says, over the last few weeks. World Heritage inscription is, in the words of Governor DeWine at his last inaugural address, a really big deal. And it's a global movement post World War II, where we looked around at the world and almost the loss of cultural sites, especially in Europe, and said, how is it that we share and preserve and recognize the places that are most important to humanity? And so that's where we sit now, is in a place that is globally significant and is important to telling the story of what it is to be human across our entire history. And being in Riyadh and watching as other countries and cross countries nominations became inscribed in the World Heritage List, we knew that this was amazing, but it hit home even further. We saw a moment where an Israeli delegation was seated for the first time in Saudi Arabia, and Jericho was listed on the World Heritage List in the same meeting where our very sites have also joined that list. So to say that it's been an incredible experience is probably an understatement, but it's been so gratifying to be back home and to see how excited not just Ohioans are, Americans, and really globally, about being able to better tell the stories of these sites and to honor the people that built these sites and the Native Americans, the descendants today of those builders. And I think, what comes next from this? This has been a moment that many people have been working towards for many decades, and I sort of offhandedly say, well, it's been coming really for 2,000 years, this moment. But I think that I look at some of the other World Heritage sites that I have some experience with. I think many of us are probably aware of Cahokia in East St. Louis and how much World Heritage status brought more education and attention to that site. I took a trip a couple years ago to Rome, and we think of ancient Rome, the Colosseum, as just always being important, but when you're there, you learn the story of how they were losing the knowledge and the history of those sites until really the Victorian period. And then there was a resurgence, and it's hard for us to even imagine a time when the Colosseum wasn't what we think of as the Colosseum. And then I also recently took a trip to Hadrian's Wall in England, a site that we joined the World Heritage List in the 1980s. And it took the Romans 7 years to build that wall, and really it's a series of earthwork and wall. And it took the English government and municipalities 10 years to build a hiking trail that connected all the parts of these things. But what you see there is this incredible experience to be in the English landscape and experiencing their history, not just of Hadrian's Wall and of the Roman Empire, but of much broader. And those are all the things that I'm so excited about now that we're here at this moment. And what World Heritage means for the profile of this story and these sites. And as Bill mentioned, the state of Ohio has been a long partner to the Ohio History Connection and the Fort Ancient, our first site added in 1891. We were founded in 1885. And so what I'd like to welcome our state senator from right here in Warren County, and a great supporter. He was just reminding me that he had decades and decades ago also worked on the museum project. So, that World Heritage has been coming for a long time. So I'd like to welcome to the microphone Senator Steve Wilson.
Well, good morning. What a day.
Yeah.
What a day. And thank you. Thank you to everybody in this room. There isn't one of you that didn't in some way participate in making this incredible inscription possible. Appreciate it. Appreciate it. Well, apparently the legislature in 1890 made this the first state park, and the legislature continues to be proud of what you all are doing, what the History Connection is doing, what the Ohio Department of Natural Resources has done. It's just been an incredible partnership. I had the pleasure of touching it in many ways back when I led the campaign to build the museum here. Back when 2 decades ago, we started on this particular journey full speed ahead. And not only that, but Hope Taft is in the room, and we walked ancient Ohio. Hope had the vision that we needed to promote this by walking from site to site to site. And we did that. And it was an incredible journey, And these sites are just unbelievable when you learn all of the background. And we made that walk, which you would have driven in a couple hours. We made that walk over a series of weekends from March 21st to June 21st. Notice the significance. And one of the things it brought to mind was how different time was then. They made that journey. They walked from Newark here for ceremonies. They walked from here to Newark for ceremonies. They walked to Chillicothe. They walked to all these different ceremonial sites. And their intelligence was incredible. Incredible geometry and math and all the things that they understood that we took years and centuries to figure out ourselves. So on behalf of the legislature again, still involved and still wanted to be involved and still proud of this accomplishment. The members of the 135th General Assembly of Ohio are pleased to extend special recognition to the Fort Ancient Earthworks as part of the Hopewell Ceremonial Earthworks that were inscribed in the World Heritage List at the World Heritage Committee meeting. This prestigious distinction is a fitting tribute to Fort Ancient. It has held an important place in Ohio's history. This site is one of 8 huge prehistoric earthen enclosures remaining in our state that were built by the indigenous Hopewell people to align with the key circles of the sun and moon and be part of Ohio's first World Heritage Site. Not only an excellent reflection on the Ohio History Connection, which manages the earthworks, but also a justifiable source of pride for the entire Warren County and Ohio community. It goes on, I'm not going to bore you with reading, but it says wonderful things, particularly about all of you that made this possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Senator Wilson. He has just been a true and marvelous supporter and continues to be, so thank you for being here today. We just so appreciate the fact that you walked with hope too, and you all can now share the stories, the on-the-ground stories of these places and the spaces in between is really special, because those experiences like Megan talked about at Hadrian's Wall, where people walk along the wall, maybe someday in Ohio it will be easier to walk than when you guys did, right? So thank you for that. Good morning or afternoon, or I guess it's 11 something, so good morning. My name is Jen Altman, and I'm the Chief Historic Sites Officer at Ohio History Connection. And I have had the great fortune of serving as the project director for the World Heritage Project for the last 7 years. And so I am so happy that you are here today. Thank you for being here. And so what we wanted to share with you today is a little bit of a story about how we got here. And as the project director, it has been my job to hold pieces of that story, but it's not all my story to tell. And so I'm really lucky today that I have other people here to tell the story with me. And some of those people I'm going to call to the front, and many of you have parts of the story to tell too. So as we start, I just want to ask anybody who has understands themselves to have been part of this project, right? Whether you're a World Heritage Ambassador or you've been staff, or whether you've supported with, through the legislature, would you please take a moment to stand up, because we would love to thank you. So I'm going to ask you just to identify yourselves and don't be shy about it. If you really work to make this happen, please stand up. And a moment of recognition and appreciation is not enough. So we will continue to try to thank everyone in all the different ways for a very long time to come. And so for today, because it's cold, I don't want to keep you out here for 3 hours, I want to move along with our conversation, and please think of it that way, as a conversation today, about how we got here, right? There's this World Heritage exists out in the world. Megan touched on some of its origins. How we got to a place where some people had the idea that these sites belong on that list and we need to work to get them there. And so I'm going to invite a few folks up in a moment. I want to introduce them. So we want to talk about how we got here and why it matters. And so you've already met Bill Kennedy and Megan Wood. And I'm going to invite a couple of other people up. Brad Lepper is our senior archaeologist for the World Heritage Program at Ohio History Connection. And Brad has a wonderful and long history with these sites, and talking about them and teaching about them and helping people, helping us understand them and then sharing that with the world. So really glad to have Brad here. John Hancock, Professor Emeritus of Architecture from the University of Cincinnati. John has been a really integral part of this project for a long time, and his own work I will let him tell the story of how he came to know about Ohio's earthworks. And then I would also very much like to welcome Chief Glenna Wallace to the front. Chief Glenna is a force of nature and just a wonderful and humble person and partner who has been, it's very hard to encompass her role in this, but she serves as the chief of the Eastern Shawnee Tribe of Oklahoma. So in addition to being the chief of a sovereign nation and all of the duties that are involved in that, she has also been working very hard with people back here in Ohio for nearly 2 decades to try to help Ohioans and Ohio History Connection, and in our previous name, the Ohio Historical Society, understand why we need to be working with American Indian tribal nations when we do this kind of work. And so, if we could please give a round of applause for these folks. So we have a story to tell, and this is, like I said, a conversation. I'm going to toss it around to different people to tell their parts of the story, but I want to give you an overview, very briefly, of this idea started sometime around 2000, and they can tell me when they think it started. We'll hear from them in a minute. But sometime around 20 plus maybe a few years ago was this idea that Fort Ancient and the Newark Earthworks and several of the sites at Hopewell Culture National Historical Park in Chillicothe or near Chillicothe belonged on the World Heritage List. And so how we moved from that idea to then in 2008, these sites known together as the Hopewell Ceremonial Earthworks were added to the United States tentative list for World Heritage. So every country that's part of the World Heritage Convention, which is a treaty countries sign on to, every country that's part of that convention can keep a tentative list of sites they think that they might propose for World Heritage in the future. And in the United States, the National Park Service manages that list. And by 2008, people here, some of the folks up here at the front and other folks around the state worked together to put together a nomination to add these 8 sites to the U.S.'s tentative list for World Heritage. So that was like official step 1, right? The idea comes first, and then official step 1 is you got to get it on the tentative list. So that happened in 2008. And then there was a decade of hard work. Think about how many of you heard about this idea between 2008 and 2018, right? Oh, World Heritage, what is that? Why would we do that? Fort Ancient, okay, that might belong on the World Heritage List. And so many people went around and shared the idea and started to put together the pieces of an actual nomination for World Heritage. So World Heritage nominations are long documents, and they have to cover the details of the site, the history of the site, how the site is managed, and all these various pieces. And to put that together, it takes many, many people, and it takes many years. And by 2018, we had progressed far enough in that work that the National Park Service's Office of International Affairs that we work with on World Heritage said, we think you're ready to actually be invited to prepare this nomination, right? So you have to prepare parts of it before they can tell you're ready. And so in 2018, that official notice went out that we were invited to prepare a nomination for World Heritage for the Hopewell Ceremonial Earthworks. And then there were, for the next 3 years, head down, nose to the grindstone, actually putting the document together. So all of this work that has happened over the last decades, 100 plus years, in understanding what we can about these places came together. And I want to hold up this document. This is the nomination dossier for World Heritage that we submitted to the National Park Service's Office of International Affairs in DC, that they then, and as I always say, it's a very COVID story, they then, in a parking lot meeting, I understand, turned over to the State Department, because people weren't working in the office, it was COVID, And then the State Department sent somebody on a plane to Paris with copies of this and hand-delivered it to the World Heritage Center in Paris. And so that's, starting at that point in early 2022 is when an official evaluation of this nomination began. And so what that meant was, electronic copies of this were sent to experts all over the world. We won't know who all those people were. But they combed through it, they understand World Heritage, they look at, they do this regularly, so they understand what the requirements really are, and they generated questions. And then we had an on-site review. We had a reviewer who came, and he is very familiar with World Heritage. We took him to all the sites, we answered questions for a week, and then he wrote up his notes, and they put all of that together. Eventually, it's from back and forth, more questions, more clarification. They put that together into a recommendation to the World Heritage Committee. And World Heritage is a UNESCO program. Countries rotate on and off that committee, but at any given moment, 21 countries sit on the committee. And so this recommendation went to the 21 countries that sit on the committee, and it was, I think, probably in June of this year, we found out for sure that that recommendation was that they should be inscribed, meaning added to the World Heritage List. And that, in fact, there were no real conditions on that. That it was sort of a clear case, right, that they should be added to the list. So we knew that in June, but the meetings were in September, and you're never sure until it actually happens, right? So we knew that it was a strong recommendation. The reviewers had seen it was a really strong nomination. They felt like the sites belonged on the list. But then we traveled to Riyadh, some of us, and it was representatives of the National Park Service, of Ohio History Connection, and of 5 of our tribal nations partners. And Chief Glenna was one of those representatives who came with us. And you listen to other nominations, and some get inscribed, and some get a lot of debate, and some get very little because they're clear-cut cases. Well, on September 19th, we had approximately 5 minutes of consideration in front of the World Heritage Committee. There were no questions, no objections. They were just added to the World Heritage List. And it is truly, I think, one of the highlights of our lives, those of us who got to be standing there, to stand there and listen to that, and sort of an unbelievable moment. So that is the outline of the story. And then what we often say, and there are several people here and who remind us of this, that this isn't an end, it's a beginning, right? And so we're starting a new life and a new phase for these places and for awareness of them across the world. And what that means is awareness of them in Ohio, that people here, people will now understand that those aren't just, oh yeah, those are just mounds like everybody has, mounds and earthworks near where they live. That's not true. They are all over Eastern North America, but these places really are truly special. And so the work continues. But we take this pause, this moment, this commemoration to really acknowledge the monumental task that has been achieved here by so many people. And the point of this is in recognizing the ancestors, the American Indian ancestors who built these places, and their commitment to these places, and their genius in what they did. And that is truly the most important thing that we've done. And we'll continue to work on, because it's never perfect, but we'll keep trying to honor them every day. So that's the outline of the story and sort of my quick, not so quick version. But what I want to do is turn it over to some folks here who have been they've had different roles in the project over a long period of time. And we have, the 3 people sitting close to me have actually been engaged with this and this idea of World Heritage for much longer than I have. I started in my role in 2016. And so I would love especially to hear from Chief Glenna and Brad and John about the beginning of the idea, that these sites belong on the World Heritage List. And I'm going to untangle the microphone here for a second and try to pass this down. Anyone want to volunteer to be the first to talk about the Lord? Who goes back the farthest? Brad Lepper's just been elected, but he goes back the farthest, so I don't know, Brad.
Yeah, I suppose that's true. I was first hired by the Ohio History Connection in 1988 to be the curator and site archaeologist for the Newark earthworks. And I don't remember when it first dawned on me that these sites deserve to be inscribed on the World Heritage List. Newark in particular, that was where my work was focused, and it's where my subsequent research has been focused. But it has since broadened to include the other sites as well. But within a couple of years, I felt these should be World Heritage Sites, but I was a voice crying in the wilderness then. But it was in like the 2000s, early 2000s, that we did a big planning grant for the Cultural Resource Management Plan for the Newark Earthworks. And we involved all kinds of stakeholders. The room was filled with people. We had to break up into groups to discuss various things. And one of the outcomes of that was a plan. And one of the recommendations in that plan was that we should work to inscribe the Newark Earthworks on the World Heritage List. And so that's where it really began for me. And then, of course, when the tentative list became open, it was the next real big benchmark for when we jumped forward. And I suppose for me, though, not to add, I can't really add much to what everybody has already said about this journey, but back in 88, 89, whenever that realization occurred to me, to today, or to, I guess, that day in Riyadh when inscription happened, it was a kind of a surreal experience. And it was driving here today before it dawned on me what my feelings were. And my feelings were of a sense of fulfilling an obligation to the ancient indigenous American Indian people who built these amazing sites, that the level of recognition their achievement has been given is now at the top of the list.
Yeah, right.
Well, I came to Cincinnati to teach architectural history at the university in 1978. And I was doing that for about 15 or so years. And architectural history was, my specialty anyway, was mostly European. And one day, about 15 years in, a new graduate student came into my office and he said, I want to do my thesis on the earthworks of Ohio. And I said, the what? So he brought in the drawings and the maps and so forth the next day, and I said, I had no idea that these amazing things existed, and even for quite a while I didn't know how amazing they actually were. But my involvement so I did get involved, and I started doing public education programs about them and some media work and so forth. My first news that there was a World Heritage nomination in the works was just after 2008, and a group got together at a series of meetings at the Ohio History Connection, and we sat around the table. Brad was there, and a few other people who might be in the room were there back in 2008. And I remember the feeling of those meetings was, we said, okay, well, gee, this is a big deal. What do we do? What do we do first? How do we get started? How do we get organized? And I think from that day forward, all the way almost until the book went in, there was a continuous learning curve about, gee, this is more complicated than we thought. This is more work than we thought. we need expertise here and there and somewhere else that we didn't know we needed, but we need it. And so that was a long process. That was the 10-year period. And of course, a very key moment during those 10 years was in 2016 when a small group of us formed a search committee to hire Jen Altman. And that was a huge step forward. It really took off from there. Gee, what was I going to say next? I think I had 3 points. I suppose my role became, during those last 3 years, the role of wordsmith and photographer and a design supervisor for the dossier book. And I'm very proud of how it turned out. We had wonderful support. Lots of people were on the team. Lots of beautiful writing by Brad and others was already available to work with. And the job was to format it to the very much of a straitjacket outline that UNESCO required. And that was a lot of work. We had beautiful advice, excellent advice from, I call her Coach Phyllis. Phyllis Ellen, an official with the National Park Service, who has experience with how to put one of these together, what all the pitfalls are and what all the nuances need to be. And with Coach Phyllis's help, we put the book together, as well as the help of some brilliant map makers and book designers and so forth. I know what else I wanted to say. And this gets to the point of why this is important. UNESCO offers you 10 criteria to choose from in order to have your site inscribed. And the typical criteria for places like this around the world is a criteria which says that your site offers compelling testimony to a cultural tradition which exists or which no longer exists. Anyway, I forget how that's all worded, but testimony to a distinctive culture. That's how we sort of paraphrase it. And of course, these do that. They tell us about this culture that we call Hopewell, and they do it very eloquently. And that criterion alone would have been enough to get inscribed. But as we talked about it, as this committee worked on this and discussed things and put together the story that we wanted to tell, we realized that we could go for a second criteria on top of that one. And that criteria is criteria number 1 on the World Heritage List, that these are masterpieces of human creative genius. And that's where I think we get to what's really important about this, is yes, there was an interesting and important culture that worked and lived in Ohio 2,000 years ago, but these people were geniuses. The level of geometrical and astronomical and architectural precision that these works embody is just about literally beyond belief. So that became a second story that we could tell within the nomination, and I think that speaks to the importance of these places getting onto the global stage and underscoring the fact that an American Indian culture here 2,000 years ago were geniuses. I think I should stop there and pass it to the chairman.
You have heard from some of the most brilliant people here in Ohio today. I can't begin to express my admiration for Brad Lepper and the work that he has done, and I can't begin to explain what he explains. I cannot begin to express my appreciation to John Hancock. He has to be the best writer, the best organizer. We wouldn't have this dossier that we have without John Hancock. Oftentimes he doesn't get the recognition that he needs or that he deserves. All of these people up here are ecstatic about being named World Heritage. I'm probably the only one that's going to cry. Because you see, John used the word genius, and I'm chief of a tribe that we were the very first tribe to be removed from the state. We were forcibly removed. We were the first tribe to have walk on foot for 700 to 800 miles, to have more than 15% of our people to die on that walk, to bury people and to have to experience that death and go off and leave those people, and not knowing where they are today, not knowing whether we really buried them or not. But having lived a life as a Native American where we've never been called geniuses, instead the word has been savages. And that's a word that I've grown up with. So in the 2 minutes that I was allotted to speak, to accept this World Heritage designation on behalf of the United States, I not only used the word geniuses, but I said uncommon geniuses. Bill Kennedy began this morning by saying, welcome to Fort Ancient. I say, welcome to my homelands.
Yes.
I came upon U.S. Earthworks quite by accident. I had worked at a college, a small college, but a college that was very progressive. And I had traveled on behalf of that college because I was a director of communications and fine arts and design program. And fine arts and design was basically nil where I live, because I live in a rural area. I'm chief of an Oklahoma tribe, and I live within 2 miles of our headquarters where my office is. But in that 2 miles, I'm 1/2 mile outside of Oklahoma, and I'm in Missouri. And so I taught at a Missouri college, and so in order to try to expose our students to culture and fine arts, I designed a travel program, which meant that we were taking 2 international trips a year, plus 1 within the United States, and we were able to offer scholarships to most of these students, at least not full scholarships, but where it was not expensive for them to travel. And in that, I traveled to more than 70 countries. I did not even realize it at the time that even though I was the one designing those trips, those countries and the places that we visited were famous because they were World Heritage Sites. So I had seen numerous World Heritage Sites. And then in addition to that, in the year 2000, the humanities director of the state of Missouri came to my office and said that 3 years later, the United States was going to be observing the 200th anniversary, the bicentennial of the Lewis and Clark expedition, the Corps of Discovery, and that many tribes were involved in that. And he felt that the tribes were shortchanged and taken advantage of, and he wanted to make sure that when we had that celebration in Missouri, that we recognized all of the tribes that had been mentioned in the Lewis and Clark journals. And he had asked me to be representative of those tribes and to travel throughout Missouri and other places giving programs. And I told him I could not do that. And he didn't understand and said, why can't you? Because I'm told that you speak several places. I'm told that you write, you do this, you do that. You've traveled a great deal. And I said, but one of the things that I have never done is no one knows the history of my tribe. No one. We have been so poor our entire lives. When we first arrived, our ancestors arrived, the documents indicate that the very first thing the chiefs did was to go and beg for food for their starving people. We got down to only 69 people. In losing all of those people, we lost almost everything else. People say that we didn't lose it, that it's asleep, but it's been asleep a long time. In fact, it snores worse than I do. We've lost our language. I've been enrolled in language classes for 3 years, and I'm still limited in what I'm able to say. We've lost our ceremonials. We never recorded our history. We didn't even know who our chiefs were in the past. And so in 2006, I had been, in 2000, when this Director of Humanities came, my president encouraged me, in fact, forced me to say that I would do this. And I was told that it would not start until 2003, and this was the year 2000. So I had 3 years to do research Shawnees, to research, because today there are 3 federally recognized Shawnee tribes, to separate and distinguish between those 3, and to learn our history, and to write a book about it. So in those 3 years, in addition to my regular teaching schedule and my supervisory schedule, I researched everything that I could about Shawnees, and in researching Shawnees, that means that you research a particular state. And guess what that state was? And that was Ohio. I researched a tremendous amount about Ohio. I came to Ohio as often as I could. I talked with people. I read everything that I could. And never in all of that 3 years, and then 3 years of giving programs, did I ever encounter the word Newark Earthworks. In fact, I never encountered the word earthworks, with the exception of one, and it was Serpent Mountain. That was the only one that I had heard of. And these were books and materials being produced, written by people in Ohio. So not only had I not heard of it, apparently most of you had never heard of it either.
We had no idea.
We had no idea. And so I was elected chief of our tribe in 2006. I had been at the college for 38.5 years and had my retirement locked in, and never been one to kind of sit and do nothing. And so it was time for election in our tribe, and I decided to run. Interestingly enough, the first female was elected, and that was me. In doing all of my research, I had read a biography of a very famous man that all of you have heard of, and that man was Tecumseh. And I've read many biographies of Tecumseh, but this one was written by John Sugden, who is an English author. And Ohio State University was sponsoring a lecture series about Native Americans and Ohio, and John Sugden was one of those lecturers. And so I knew that John Sugden was coming to Ohio State University, and I came to Ohio to listen to John Sugden. I did not have a single idea that the next day there was a trip involved with that, and that everyone who wanted to go could accompany John Sugden, who had to go, and he had never heard of a place called Newark Earthworks either, and we went to a place called Newark Earthworks. So it was by total accident, because I, along with John, had no idea that there was such a place. I not only had no idea, but I certainly had no idea that these earthworks were covered with a golf course. One of my favorite places in the United States to visit, and that I go back as often as I can, is Arlington National Cemetery. Arlington National Cemetery is about the theme of death. But when I visit Arlington National Cemetery, I always come away uplifted. There is a spirituality, there is an honor there, there is a recognition of our state, of our United States, of our country. You leave with a feeling of pride, and you leave feeling elevated, and you leave feeling more educated as you walk along some of those stones and those tombstones and read the stories and visit John F. Kennedy's grave and read all of the quotations there. And when I came to Newark Earthworks, earthworks were built by Native Americans, and they were built with a spirituality, with a reverence. But there's no spirituality, there's no reverence with a golf course. I'm not saying that there's not excitement, I'm not saying that there's not good things, I'm not opposed to golf, but it doesn't have anything to do with the people who built it, the reason that they built it, the sacrifices that they made. And I walked away, when I first saw it, I was actually told that it didn't belong there and shouldn't be there because there was a golf tournament that day. And there's only one path to walk to go toward that viewing platform, and that's the cart path that they also take, that they were driving to take the golfers from one place to another, to take the visitors from one place to another. And we were trying to walk on that cart path, and we were in the way. And they became irritated with us, even though we were kind, we were polite. And they said some things to us, so get out of the way, get back. We're having a tournament here today. You shouldn't be here. Come back another day. Like I lived in Missouri near Oklahoma, and they were open one day a year that I could plan a date, you know, just for that one day. Especially when I had no idea the place was there. I ultimately made it to that viewing platform, and when I looked out, I had an idea. I could not believe what I was seeing. Tremendous pride, knowing that they were built by our ancestors. And I say our ancestors because it's not just the Eastern Shawnee tribe. It's all Native Americans, all of our ancestors. And to look out and to see that, and to see the size of it, the enormity of it, the genius of it, was just overwhelming. And therefore, a brief moment, there was that pride. There was that exhilaration. But then when I noticed how people were treating the place and how they were behaving, and that pride turned to disappointment and then to anger. And I stood on that site and felt about like I feel right now, that it was all I could do to keep from crying. As I walked down those steps, a biblical verse was all that I could think of. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And in that moment, I decided in my strange, stubborn way, I don't know what one voice can do, but silence has been long enough. So I was not there to pursue World Heritage. I give these people all the credit for that. I had nothing to do with that. That was not my idea. And there were a few people in Ohio who did know about the Newark Earthworks and who had been to Cahokia and had talked with them as to why they had more people who come to see their earthworks than their Newark. I give credit to Dick Shields, who was the manager, or not even the manager, he was hired as an adjunct facility, educational facility of Ohio State University, and he was the person there. And I met Dick Shields, and I met Marty Chatsmith, who is from Oklahoma and is a Native American, and I met other people, and they were trying to support Newark Earthworks, but they were getting nowhere. So they needed a Native American voice, and so simply by accident, and then by stubbornness, did I become that Native American voice. All I wanted that day, and all I wanted for years, was not World Heritage. I simply knew that it's not the people here today, it's not the people who live in Ohio today who were responsible for removing all tribes, because you had 44, 45, 46 tribes here in Ohio. You don't have a single one today. They made all of us leave. And so the people may have been eliminated, but what our ancestors accomplished should not be eliminated.
Amen.
That's what I was saying. And that's all I was saying. We have been removed as a race, but our accomplishments of our ancestors should not be removed and should be preserved. And so from that day forward, that was my conversation with Ohio, and at that time, Historical Society. The first 2 or 3 years, they weren't always the friendliest conversations. But I give credit to a man by the name of Bert Logan, who is no longer the CEO of Ohio History Connection, has retired, but he was the man who took on the official task and changed that organization entirely. And so when I talk about Newark Earthworks, I've said I'm not going back there because yes, we have the World Heritage designation, and yes, we've been recognized as our genius and their uncommon genius, but we haven't removed that golf course. And so for me, it is not over. For me, receiving the designation of World Heritage is exceptionally important, but it's an incomplete chapter for me. I want that golf course removed. I'm hoping you want that golf course removed. And I'm hoping that each of you will do your part in helping to get that golf course removed. We have one more court case to go to. That's going to cost us some money. So these people here are going to be too proud to say, you need to donate something. I don't care whether it's a $5 bill or whether it's a $10 bill. We need to be able to raise the funds to pay, because they still have a legitimate more than 50 years left on their lease, and we legitimately owe that, and we want to be honorable people. At the same time, we don't want to make millionaires of them either. So I had not planned to be here today. I was at another conference yesterday, and the theme of that conference is history is significant. And that is important here today, that history is significant. And the recognition of World Heritage simply says, but I shouldn't say simply, but it says you've proven your history. And so we've proven, and I would ask one more thing of you, if you are here in Ohio and if you have a school system that has a mascot with the name of Savages, I would hope that you would speak up and say, we need to change that name. We need to get our schools to teach that Native Americans lived here. I've had people that I've worked with here in Ohio History Connection who have said that they have actually been taught when they were children in school that they were taught that the Indians died. Well, we didn't die. There are 574 tribes of us in the United States, and 39 of those tribes are in Oklahoma. And Ottawa County, where my tribe is, there are 9 tribes in one small county, and 7 of them were removed from this Ohio Valley. So I come back with tears in my eyes, appreciation, wonder for all the work that the people have done, but to say we're not through. We still have more to go. And so I thank you for being here today. I have a friend who's here with me, and her name is Judy Smith. And she's been asking about what are all the mounds like, and I've been trying to tell her some things. And when we were driving here, or in fact yesterday when we were talking, I said, and I truly said this, I said, Fort Ancient is the place that has the friendliest staff, the most dedicated staff, and who will do anything for you. And I mean that. So, Bill, thank you for everything that you do. John Blosser, you were here for years and years. Thank you for taking care of this place in Ohio history. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I mean, right? What do you say after that? Except that Chief Glenna, you always talk about how it's not done. I mean, World Heritage is important, and it's a really important milestone, but there is more work to do, and it will take all of us. And so she alluded to the fact that we're working on the leasehold at the Octagon Earthworks. I'm going to see if Megan Wood wants to give a little brief on that so you can know where that's going.
Thank you, Jen, and thank you, Chief Wallace. I started with the organization in 2006, which I think was just after the last maximum moon rise. So we're gonna start giving out service pens in 18.6-year cycles of the moon, which is what is encoded in the octagon at the Newark Earthworks. As Chief Wallace said, that her work with our organization over the years, and then the work of my predecessor, Bert Logan, on at first negotiating and then going to the legal route to obtain the leasehold at the Octagon, has been over a decade really in the making. And on October 17th, we will be seating a jury in a jury trial to assign the amount that we pay the country club, our tenant, so that we can end the lease and open the site to the public. We expect that jury trial to take about the week, and then we have a short prescribed amount of time before we pay the amount. And then hopefully very shortly after that, we'll be able to open the site up for public. And it will take us, again, the work ahead, many years, if not, a decade or more, to do restoration work and make that site honoring and a preserved earthworks site a sacred ancient site. So we do have a lot of work ahead of us there. But we wouldn't be here right now and so close to that moment without many of the people that are sitting here with me, and many that are out in the audience. And I'm just humbled to be the steward of making sure that that comes to fruition and that we continue on the road. And I just also want to say briefly that as listening to today, that this whole process has changed who we are as an organization and how we think about our work around American Indian history. We have a policy now. We have a director of American Indian Relations. We have these really incredible relationships that they've made me better as a person, and I've benefited, and I think that's what I think we all that have been changed by this want to share with everyone else, because it's really been a gift. And even, I think, what did I say, stern kindness that Chief Wallace has shown us over the years to tell us what we really need to hear, but in a way that has been teaching, and I'm grateful for that. So please stay tuned for more news, and as we head into this jury trial. Thank you, Jen.
Thank you so much, Megan. And there is lots more to come, but I also know that it's everyone's been sitting here for almost an hour. So I just want to say a couple of quick things overall. We're lucky to have our National Park Service partners here. I saw Susan nicely, and there she is in the back. If you have questions about the sites in Chillicothe and Ross County, please talk with our NPS colleagues. They have a lot of great programs and events. One of the things that's coming up, so people ask, okay, well, what's next after World Heritage? And Chief Wallace and Megan just gave you a really good glimpse of some of the big work that's ahead. And then on the sites, there's lots of work happening in terms of programming and events. We have an open house here again tomorrow. And then next Saturday, we'll be at Mound City at Hopewell Culture National Historical Park in Chillicothe and Ross County, having a more formal commemoration ceremony. That ceremony starts at 1 p.m. and it's open to the public. So I really invite and encourage you to be there with us next Saturday. And they'll be doing some tours before and after, so you can kind of make a day of it. And then next Sunday, we will be at the Newark Earthworks. It's one of the 4 days per year that are set aside where we have full access to the site at the Octagon. We'll have events at the Great Circle, and those events kind of stretch all day. I think we're starting them at 10 a.m. and running through the day with tours. So next weekend is another great weekend for commemorating this part of the long and big journey that we're all on together. And since we're standing here at Fort Ancient, I want to invite Bill Kennedy to tell us a little bit about some things that you'll see here because of World Heritage and the continued investment and partnership with tribes that we're deepening. So Bill, do you want to just pop up here and then we'll run through the rest of the schedule for today and let people on their way.
Thank you, Jen. So one of the things that obviously World Heritage means is it means more visitors, it means more footsteps. We spent a lot of time planning and working towards building our capacity here at Fort Ancient. The good news is that Fort Ancient has a lot of capacity. People have been asking for years, they go, well, how are you going to deal with what if your visitation doubles or triples or more? Well, in the 1930s, Fort Ancient had visitations as high as 110,000 visitors a year. But we need to find the best ways to accommodate those visitors in a way that doesn't negatively impact the site. And in addition to the archaeological aspects and American Indian aspects to this site, we also have historic, things like this shelter, things from the 1930s that we're caring for as well. So we have some facility, upgrades and things that we'll be working towards. Interpretively is what is most important as far as the visitor experience goes. So we are beginning the early stages of making upgrades to the visitor experience, both outside with our exterior signage, making some upgrades to the interior. And one of the key things about upgrades is that when Fort Ancient's museum was expanded and built to what you see today, that was in the late 90s. That was before we were doing consultation with our tribal partners, and it was a different era with different goals. I'm super, excited to share the Fort Ancient Museum. It's a wonderful facility, and it is the only place in Ohio where we attempt to tell the entire American Indian story in Ohio, from the Ice Age up to post-contact. There is no other museum in Ohio that attempts to do that. But we can do it better. And one of the ways we will do it better is by working with our tribal partners and incorporating their voice into how that heritage is being presented. Jen told you about some of the events that are coming up. As far as what else is going on here this weekend, if you have not been on a tour already today, one of the things that is going to happen in about 20 minutes is, I can't remember if it's Brad or John, but it's John, is going to lead a tour at 12:30, leaving from just outside the picnic shelter here. And he's going to take a tour of visitors through here and end at the museum. While you're here, if you've not been up to the museum, if you've not been up to the gift shop, if you've not been up to some of the things going on up there, please be sure to make the time to do that. We have a lot of staff working up there to kind of anchor the other end of what's going on here. I'm really proud, particularly with the work of our visitor services, Sarah and Connie, that we have a lot of new things in our gift shop. And one of the things that is best about that is we have a lot of new things that are from Native artists that are available up there. So I hope that you'll check that out while you're here. We will have another tour at 3:30 and another one at 5 o'clock, also from the shelter here. We'll be open again tomorrow with tours and programs. If you've done a tour or you want more, at 2 o'clock, we have Bob Reardon here, retired from Wright State University. Bob ran 11 seasons of excavation on the Moorhead Circle here at Fort Ancient, and he's going to talk about that at the museum in the education room at 2 o'clock. So I hope that you will attend that if you want to learn, get a level deeper about some of the things that we've learned about Fort Ancient. So with that, Jen, do you want to make some final comments?
I just want to thanks for running through that. I just want to thank you all again for being here. I want to thank the wonderful people who are sitting here and all of you out there who have helped contribute to making this happen. So if we could just give another round of applause. And if you are interested in seeing the actual copy of the nomination dossier, I will just leave this one up here, and please feel free to come and look at it. And just stay with us on this long journey. Again, this is a great milepost on the journey, and there's always more to come. So thank you for being here today.